Hi again, everyone. So after learning about the solar system in the previous video, now I would like to talk about the expanding universe. First of all, by end of this video, you should be able to do two things. First, to discuss evidence indicating distant galaxies are moving away from each other. The second one is to be able to discuss the connection between the expansion of the universe and a theory called the Big Bang Theory. Okay, so to start, what I'm showing you here on the left is an illustration of the evolution of the universe. So just to give you an idea how big the universe is, um, all of these tiny swirls that we see within this image, they are all called galaxies. And within a single galaxy, there are billions to hundreds of billions of solar systems in it. And our solar system, the one that we just learned in the previous video, it is actually just a single solar system in a galaxy called the Milky Way. So that shows how small, how tiny we are compared to the universe. So anyway, you should know that the modern science suggests that the universe is expanding, as it is illustrated by this figure right here, meaning that these galaxies, those different swirls that we see within this picture, are actually moving away from each other as we speak. So it's, as analogy, it is actually very similar to a love of raisin bread dough. Because as the bread expands and rises, the raisins within the bread dough are actually moving away from each other, right? But they are still stuck in the bread dough. Okay, so the big question here is that how do we know all of this, right? How do we know that the universe is expanding? And how do we know that the distant galaxies are moving away from each other? So these are the types of critical questions that I would like to encourage you to make all the time throughout this course. And if you do have questions, let me know in the Q&A discussion board. Okay. So to answer that question, we have to first understand the concept of Doppler effect. So the easiest way to understand this concept is by imagining a moving whistling train. So the whistle from the train, obviously it generates sound waves that travel into our ears, right? And that's the reason we can hear the whistling sound. Um, as the train moves, by the way, the configuration of the sound waves change. In the front side of the moving train, the sound wave has shorter wavelengths and higher frequency, just like the image that I'm showing you here on the right. And this is the reason the sound of a moving train becomes increasingly intense when it is approaching us. Okay, and in contrast, when the train passed us, the whistling sound becomes less and less and less intense, right? So the reason for this is because the sound waves at the back of the train, just like this figure shows, the sound waves have longer wavelengths and lower frequency. So that's the reason why we hear less and less intense of whistling sound as the train moves away from us. So yeah, so that's really what Doppler effect is all about, really. So the question again, so what does it have to do with the expansion of the universe, right? Well, we have to understand that the most common way to observe the space objects in the outer space is by observing the light waves emitted by stars, by galaxies out there. Now, because a light wave is a type of wave, remember, a light wave is a type of wave, right? The concept of Doppler effect also applies here. So when an object, when an object emitting light and moving toward an observer, for example, here on the left side of this figure, okay, the observer will observe blue light or blue shift, as it has, because blue lights, they usually have high frequencies and shorter wavelengths. Whereas if an object that are emitting lights and moving away from an observer, as described or as illustrated by the right side of this figure right here, that observer will observe red light that have typically low frequencies and low frequency and long wavelengths. Okay, so it's practically the same concept as the moving train. And guess what? All light emitting space objects from distant galaxies produce red shifts or red lights, which means that these objects are moving away from us and they're moving away from each other. So these observations suggest that the universe is expanding, just like the loaf of bread that I showed you earlier at the beginning. But I'm going to stop the video now. But before you leave, I would like you to respond to this question right here. How does the observation of the expansion of the universe relate to the postulation of the Big Bang Theory? Okay, if you don't know what Big Bang Theory is, there are resources in the textbook, or you can just look it up in the Google. So go ahead, respond to these questions, and I look forward to seeing all the comments on this one. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye bye now.